I am Grady Culhane of the CapeCod.com NewsCenter, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest who's involved in whale watching. Do you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners?
Sure. My name is Lilly, and I'm the Director of Marine Conservation and Education at Hyannis Whale Watcher Cruises.
All right, awesome. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio today. And as we look around ourselves on video, we have all kinds of wonderful props that have been brought in. So I have already so many questions. The inner kid in me just wants to touch everything.
Absolutely.
But I'll resist the urge for right now. We want to start off with some new programs that are coming from you guys. We have heard a little bit more about this expanded education program. So do you mind just telling us a little bit more about what that is, how it fits into the services you guys already provide?
Absolutely. So on a whale watch, of course, we bring people out and they have all kinds of knowledge base and background information about the whales and the ecosystems. There are people who come, they're regulars from right here in Barnstable, and they bring their family every time they have somebody visiting them. And then we have people coming from all over the world. So we like to go out and not only show them the whales, but tell them about what it is that they're seeing, what they're doing, why are they here, telling them about the ecosystem, and then also really like to cap it off and telling people how it is that the whales need their help.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Obviously, we have the North Atlantic right whale, which numbers, I believe, fewer than 360 now.
That's right.
There are more days in the year than there are whales in the sea for the North Atlantic right whale. So it's very unfortunate. And but you guys, yeah, you see them quite often. Already I kind of see a few of, I believe we have a couple of pictures here. These are baleen whales specifically on this. But so that is, so you've already been educational before. I've been on the whale watches with you guys, and you do spend a lot of the time talking a lot about what's been going on. I'm not quite sure if I've heard your voice specifically or not. But it is very interesting how much educational approach you guys take to this. So has this been in a long time coming? Is this kind of just a natural extension? Have you had to gear up or study up to provide this kind of service? Can you just elaborate more?
So I personally have been, this will be my 16th season, and I started as a school teacher. And I would have chosen this career if I knew it was an option, but I didn't grow up near the ocean, and I wasn't particularly great at science in the classroom sense, so I didn't pursue it. And then I went on a whale watch one day and just had a light bulb moment. I thought, that's it, and just really didn't look back and have done everything that I can to stay in this particular field. And then Hyannis Whale Watcher Cruises brought me on full-time for this position with the aim to expand on that education program. So every whale watch for us had a naturalist, and we would walk around and educate people, show them a little bit about where they're going using maps, visuals, telling them about the animals that they're seeing. But we're really trying to bump up and bring out more hands-on approach, more interactive, something that will elicit more questions, get the kids a little bit more engaged, and really tap into multisensory approach of learning.
All right, that's awesome. So when is this going to be? Is this already kind of rolling out now? Is this something that's already a part of Whale Watches, or is this something that's for the near future? Can you just give us a little bit of a timeline?
Sure. So we're starting up on May 16th on Thursday, and we're excited to get this out and running first day.
All right, awesome. A new addition. So I guess, is this going to be some of the tools that you are using as part of this as well? Or can you tell us a little bit more about some of the things you brought in today? Like what the heck is this thing, first and foremost? But yeah, just tell us a little bit more about kind of, is this going to be tools that you use as part of this program?
Yes.
Awesome.
So absolutely. So we'll start here. This is a sample of whale baleen. And to start,
goodness,
absolutely.
Oh, wow.
So to start, there are two different types of whales. There are about 90 species of whales in the world, and about 15 of them have what is called baleen instead of teeth. And as you're looking at it, you can sort of imagine that it looks a bit like a broom, and it feels a little bit like a broom. In fact, it's made of keratin, so not quite dentine like our teeth.
Okay.
So this structure goes, and you can look at this particular whale model, it goes all the way around the top jaw of a baleen whale's mouth, in the same spot that they would have teeth. But instead of a biting or chewing motion, these particular whales are eating very small fish. They can eat plankton, they can eat fish as large as herring. Right here on Stellwagen Bank, which is the feeding ground here in Massachusetts, they're eating smaller fish that are about the size of this sand lance or sand eel.
So this is an actual, this is life size, essentially.
That's right.
Okay, and it's also very gummy, which is very fun to hold.
Yeah.
But that's a cute little guy. It's very thin, and this is not going to escape through the baleen. This is okay to...
Right. So if you can imagine and that's what this picture will show you, the whales will take a big mouthful of water, catch the fish in the bottom jaw there, and then they'll filter the water out using their tongue.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I have never been privy to a whale's tongue before. It's something I never really thought about until now. And I can't help but be filled with both awe and dread at the concept of how big a whale's tongue might be.
That's right.
So it's very interesting. We did have that story of that fellow that is out of Provincetown that also got swallowed by I'm sure he didn't end up in the digestive tract of the whale, but had been partially ingested into the mouth. So that's all very interesting and really kind of also spells the size of some of these creatures. So these are all things that you'd be talking about on the Whale Watch as well, is kind of going through, maybe talking with some of the kids or families and educating them more in addition.
That's right.
Awesome.
So the idea is to get these samples of baleen and even the fish. The kids love to hold the fish. Get these types of things in their hands while they're listening to the naturalist or an educator. We have a great volunteer program. Listening to those people talk, so they're really getting the whole sense of what it's like to maybe be part of a whale.
Sure. So this is also, I mean, we are a radio company by trade, and our audio is everything. So I do want to give a little bit of a bristle check, if we can, to the microphone for those at home. Just want to listen to how stiff that can be. It is very broom and straw-like. Now, how does this vary? So, I'm sorry, what whales? This is a minke whale, you said?
That one's from a minke whale.
Okay. What is this? This darker complexion one, though? This black one? Is
this
also
particular is one plate from a humpback whale. So it's a little bit of a larger species of whale. So the baleen is a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But it works in the exact same way.
And this would also be packed a little bit more thick. This is just a singular plate.
That's right. So this one that you're holding here is one plate. And then this minke whale had about 15 plates packed together. Well, they have anywhere from about 400 to 800 in a whale's mouth.
Wow. And is that something that can continually grow, or is that something that they're born with as many as they're going to have, similar to adult teeth? How does that work?
They're mostly born with what they have.
Okay.
And if they were to lose it, if it were to fall out, it would not regenerate, say like a shark's tooth or anything like that. And they don't have a second set like we have adult teeth.
Oh, very interesting. And it'll just grow with them, essentially? Or do they end up they have too much in their mouth when they're kids, and then they'll grow up?
It will grow very slowly over time.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Now, it looks like a vertebrae over there.
That's right.
Hanging out. Mm-hmm. Is this from a specific whale that is common to the area too, or?
It is. It was found locally. I don't actually know the species of whale this particular one is from, but it would be about the size of a dolphin.
Okay, so I need to back up again. So this is an actual bone? Is that what I'm now? Okay, I thought this was a replica when we were introducing with all the props before we got started. So now wow, my goodness, the heft. So this is actually formerly part of a whale that has been cleaned and preserved, ready to go for educational purposes. This is amazing. So this, how many roughly of these would be in a whale, considering the tail? I'm assuming they've got more bones than we do.
Well,
when it comes to
so you can see that the size difference is obviously varied. So there's, I believe, somewhere between about 35 and 50 vertebrae per whale.
Wow, and I'm sure it's very specific to the individual animal.
That's right.
So that's awesome. I hear we have a tremendously large population of whales in general for the Cape and Islands region. We're the number one hotspot for the right whale specifically. But can you give us a few examples of some other whales? You already mentioned the minke whale, but are there others that you wanted to highlight for us?
Yep. So what we're watching most often on our whale watches are these humpback whales. And they're characterized by this dorsal fin on the back. They have a bit of a hump, which is how they get their name. And then they have these very long pectoral flippers. And actually their scientific name is Megaptera novaengliae, which translates roughly to big-winged New Englander. And that's because of these long flippers. They're the largest appendage of any animal in the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. Other whales, their flippers are considerably shorter. We watch them a lot because they tend to be a bit more charismatic. You're seeing them open mouth feed. A lot of times people want to see a whale breach or jump. These are the ones that we see most often breaching. However, really any species of whale could. And some other examples of whales that we see include the minke whales, like we mentioned, fin or finback whales. We'll sometimes see Atlantic white-sided dolphins, which are these little guys down here.
Very interesting, very colorful as well.
They are. They're beautiful.
So that is very interesting. So coincidentally, due to my long, lanky nature, big-winged New Englander was my nickname in high school as well. No, just teasing around. But so that is why do they breach? Is that something that's like for mating? Is it just for fun? Are they intelligent enough to want to have just a good time jumping around, or is that something that's for some specific a purpose for them?
We don't know a specific purpose, and my personal interpretation is that it probably has multiple purposes. A lot of the times when we go out there, we see the calves, and they're somewhere between 4 and 10 months old, depending on what time of year it is. You can almost see that it looks like play. They're just figuring out that they have these tails and these flippers. You can see them sort of opening and closing their mouths, figuring that out. They're mimicking some of the adults. So a lot of the times we see them, and it seems very playful. With the adults, one of the biggest theories is that it's for communication purposes. And you think about when they come back down and they land in the water and create that big splash. Of course, that splash is making a sound underwater. So it's thought that it's possibly to communicate with each other's. One really strong example for this theory is one day I was out. It was a little bit later in the season, so the calves get a little bit more independent. And we were watching a particular calf, and it was staying right near the boat, but we really didn't see any adult whale nearby. We knew this particular individual, and we knew that there was some distance between them, so we weren't too concerned. But about 2 miles away, all of a sudden, one large whale started breaching, and she breached over and over and over. And all of a sudden, this calf, who had been swimming circles around our boat, it stopped and it just made a straight line back towards that breaching whale. And we sort of followed along behind it to see what would happen. And as soon as they were side by side again, that adult whale stopped breaching. And then upon identifying who it was, we were able to see that it was the calf's mother.
Very interesting. So it could be the equivalent of like a calling to return home for the evening. That's very fascinating. As well. So do you guys take other data points while you're out on the water? Do you have clipboards and you're keeping track? You already mentioned that you can identify some of these whales by, I assume, markings. But how are you marking down like what species you're seeing while you're out, what time of day it was, stuff like that?
Sure. We're recording what is called sightings data. So we're taking note of every group of whale that we're seeing, whether that's an individual whale. Sometimes you have a mother and calf pair or a different pair. And sometimes we see big groups of whales when we get really lucky. And that's really what we're aiming for, if we can reach it. But we're looking at how many whales are in a particular group, marking down the time that they're being seen. We have a GPS that we record this information on. And then we're making notes on the behavior. Are they feeding? Is the mother nursing? Are they logging, which is when they're sleeping at the surface? Are they traveling through the area? Are they seemingly foraging underwater? And then we also take note of if that social structure changes in the time that we're watching them. Do we have 2 adult whales that were swimming together and then they've split off and they've gone off to do their own thing? Do we have another whale that's moved into the area and it's decided to join? And we're also looking at if there are birds in the area, if the birds are actively feeding with the whales, and we also pay attention to if we can either see the fish that the whales are eating, and we look for if the whales have pooped.
That is very important knowledge to know. But it is really interesting to see, especially the interactions between different species with the birds as well. Now, perhaps before we move away too much from the whales breaching, I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit more about maybe boating and safety in terms of how things are going. Lately, I believe it was last summer, we'd brought this up as well before hopping on the microphones, but there was that breaching whale that landed on a small vessel by more close to Plymouth. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of some maybe recommendations or what people can do to stay safe while still enjoying the local ecosystem?
Yes, absolutely. So whale watches, a lot of us follow a commercial partnership program called Whale Sense, which is a partnership with a number of organizations and NOAA, where we're staying at least 100 feet away from a whale. We're not driving towards them as they're coming towards us. We always stay behind them or parallel to them. And we're also making note of their behavior as they're being watched and they're kind of being around the boat traffic that is just inevitable here in Massachusetts Bay and Cape Cod Bay. So with the smaller boats, we're asking them to follow the same courtesies. And it doesn't have a lot to do necessarily with the whale watch boats, but unfortunately, and this is really ramped up in recent years, we've seen a lot of really near close calls with these smaller recreational boats or fishing boats who are either trawling right in front of whales or they're getting very, very close to whales. It's really easy to do and it's really exciting to do because you just want the best look possible and there's really nothing stopping you. However, that becomes really dangerous for the animal because they're unpredictable. When they're underwater, you don't know where they are. They're very agile. They can turn very quickly. And unfortunately, we have witnessed boats striking these whales as we're watching them. And you can imagine that that's really detrimental to them, especially to maybe a young whale, a young calf who's naturally curious and doesn't necessarily know to stay away from these perceived threats. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot are fishermen who are naturally fishing around the whales because the whales are there because of the fish, and same thing for the target fish species. And what we're hoping to see a change towards is a little bit more respect towards those animals and just a bit of an awareness. So, for example, if you see a whale coming near your boat, reel in the gear just real quick. Just make it so that it's not a dangerous place for them to just exist. They've been here a long, long time, and that's something that we're hoping for. Unfortunately, too, we know that they can be dangerous to people accidentally, and that was the case with that whale in Plymouth. And what had happened there, that particular whale was a juvenile, and it was feeding on a type of fish called menhaden. And that particular style of feeding that they use as they're doing that is really, really unpredictable. And instead of doing a really methodical bubble feeding like we see on Stellwagen Bank, these younger whales would sort of dart through these schools of fish, and they'd lunge up as fast as they can. They're just using their speed and their size to catch the fish. But of course, the fish are moving around so quickly. So when you have these fish and the whale is coming up, it just happened to land down. You can see actually in that particular video, the fish are jumping up at the surface as the whale's coming underneath them. And it just happened to land on that boat. And those people were very, very lucky. A lot more damage and a lot more injury could have occurred.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these whales are multi-ton creatures, so I can only really imagine the kind of, that's a lethal event, potentially. So good to be safe, and as we're seeing more and more whales and a lot more people involved in that, it sounds like safety is going to be a paramount concern. So it is very intriguing. Do you mind as well talking a little bit, so unfortunately you have seen some of these circumstances, as some of the whale strikes happening live, unfortunately. I'm sure it's not a very positive experience for anybody involved, so definitely want to avoid that.
Absolutely. We have seen it, and some of them are when a boat is traveling through at full speed, and some of them are a bump when, like I said, you can see the people and they're all up on the bow and they have their cameras up and they're trying to get the best photo, and they just get a little bit too close, or the whale makes a turn, or something is going on. And we have seen strikes. There's a really great program out there called See a Spout, and it educates boaters on different ways that they can be aware of the whales and watch them safely, because it is a really cool thing to have right here off the shores of Cape Cod. And so when people have a really nice day and they want to get out there and get excited about them, we just want them to do it safely and respectfully for the animals. And like I said, See a Spout is a really great program that helps boaters learn a little bit more about whale behavior. If, for example, the whale is blowing a bubble net or a bubble cloud, you're seeing the water turn green before you're seeing the whale come to the surface. So knowing what to look for can help avoid those circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So as well, recently on our program, we had the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. We had a couple of officials from there talking about how they just recently tagged their 700th shark, which was very awesome. We wanted to celebrate with cake. Unfortunately, no cake was to be had. But we've been seeing more sharks coming into the area. It's a local ecosystem. We talked about how that's a very healthy thing for the ecosystem to be able to support an apex predator like that. Has that changed the way you guys will be kind of studying up? Have you guys have been thinking about adding whale and also potentially shark watches to your tags or slogans? How has that been playing into your services so far?
We have always looked for sharks, and actually there was a report of a basking shark out there this week. So when we get started up on Thursday, that's honestly what I'm hoping to see.
You got one of those guys over there?
That's this little guy.
Wow. So
and by little, I do mean he's the second largest fish in the ocean.
Quite the little guy.
Yes.
So these are just so lovely. They're quite dopey looking. I don't believe they have any teeth. They're the biggest and scariest looking, but they're also, I believe, one of the least threatening of the shark family, next to, say, little guys. But these, we saw quite a few of these while we were out doing the whale watch a few years back. So they're relatively common, it seems. Or maybe did I just get lucky that day? Can you tell me more?
They're definitely here on Stellwagen Bank. It's interesting. The last couple of years, and specifically, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we weren't seeing any. So they were sort of one of those bonus sightings that you'd see every once in a while. So the trick, to answer your question, the trick about sharks is that they don't need to come to the surface to breathe air. And so it's really, really difficult to specifically go out and look for one. You really just have to be both in the right place at the right time and constantly looking. So even when we're out watching the whales, I'm still scanning and just still constantly looking for additional animals, because you never know when you'll see that sort of pop up, that fin, or even just a little bit of a shadow. But their numbers seem to be, or certainly their dynamic has shifted a little bit, in the sense that, like I said, there was one summer we didn't see them, maybe if at all, just a couple of times. And so I'm hopeful that they're making their way back. With the sightings data, we're looking at not only the whales, but also, like I said, the seabirds, but also sharks, ocean sunfish, and there are a number of different organizations that we'll share that data with, and they're studying these various species, and hopefully will be contributing to that long-term population study.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've been seeing so much more about one of the topics that we talked about with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy was also the involvement of citizen scientists a lot more in the recent time. You guys kind of operate in a pseudo-citizen, but you are an organization, and it's more methodical, and then but you're also not really like a research firm federally funded or anything as well. But it's very interesting to see how much data is able to be collected. Have you seen a great white shark in your time out on the water? Is that something that's eluded you so far? Or?
Eluded is a perfect word. I feel like I am the only naturalist on Stellwagen Bank who hasn't seen one yet. So
we got to call up Greg Scomo and get you on, just so you can get the sticker on your resume or what have you.
That is the goal.
That is the. I got to get a little shark tattoo to celebrate when you get that.
I think when it finally happens, absolutely.
The most ecstatic woman on the boat, on the PA system. I can already hear the excitement. Well, that is about all the time that we have, but is there anything else you wanted to highlight, either more about the expanded education program, how people can get involved, where they can learn more, just anything you wanted to touch on while I still have you here?
Yeah, we're really excited, but like I said, about that education program. We invite people to come out and join us. This year, something else that's new is we have interns who are coming from Texas, Colorado, New York, and one right here in Barnstable, and they're part of our education team. We have all of these things and a number of other materials to show you, so we'd love to have you.
All right, awesome. Great to have so much marine involvement. You guys are a facet of the blue economy. We've spoken a lot about that on this program before, of like, preserving the blue economy, supporting the blue economy. You're the blue economy. So it's interesting to get some words from you guys. How does it feel to basically be like, a while back, we talked about an anecdote of like in various African hunts that went on for like lions. And it's like, well, how much is a lion worth? Because you can hunt it and charge the hunter and you've gotten one sum. But if you were to leave the lion alive in its natural habitat, you can have the tourism aspect, and that one lion now brings in a lot more in terms of worth. Now, I don't want to reduce our beautiful marine environment to purely a numbers game of how many dollars it is. But do you think it's a good idea, essentially, be able to draw in, have an economic pillar be built around some of these beautiful creatures around our environment?
For sure. And we see that people year after year, they're excited to come and see them, whether it's their 100th whale watch or their first time stepping on a boat. We're always happy to bring them out. I had heard an estimate of one particular whale's value was over $1 million in this one particular summer, where there are a few whales. A lot of us were watching this one particular individual, and we'll never forget the summer of Nile. And yeah, like I said, we love bringing people out, and I love getting to share that experience with them.
Mm-hmm. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It has been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you for having me.
I'm Grady Culhane in the CapeCod.com NewsCenter, and thank you for listening to Sunday Journal.